All right. I started to pin it last night a little bit. Just gonna use clips. I think it's gonna be easier. I don't know if this is legal or not, what I'm doing. I have no idea. If you're a traditional quilter, you may have heart palpitations about what I'm doing today. I finished my big stitch quilting on this quilt last night. I've been working on it for a while, but there it is. So I'm going to experiment with this. I have an idea about what I want to do for the border and how I'm going to bind this quilt. And I wanted to share that with you today. It has 2 layers of poly down for the batting. And then the backing is on here as well. So it's all quilted. Now I just have to finish it. And I'm going to try this technique and I'm going to see if it's going to work. So when you baste a quilt, we always typically have the batting and the backing to be a couple of inches bigger, because when we quilt the quilt top, it kind of pulls and takes up extra fabric. So if you're a beginner quilter, that's why there's so much extra fabric around the edges of this quilt. And what I'm doing, or I'm going to attempt to do, is typically I would lay this on the floor, get my big ruler, get my cutting mat, and then cut it. And just trim it down all the way around and then put some binding on it. But because this quilt's so puffy, and the binding that I would use for this quilt is pretty much the same fabric that I have on the back of the quilt. So my thought was, what if I just roll the extra over and create like a really wide binding. Now the trick is I'm going to have to make sure when I stitch this down is that I'm catching the edge of the quilt all the way around. And I think the hardest thing will be keeping it the same width all the way up the length of the side of the quilt. So I'm going to go for 2 inches roughly. It's not quite, it's probably more like an inch and, oh, it's 2 inches here. So I'm just going to try and measure that all the way up. I think that's going to be the hardest part. And I'm probably just going to have to sew it very slowly to make sure I keep things straight and even. It's been a few days. I've stitched down both sides of the quilt now, and I actually started to do some of the big stitching technique over top of it where I stitched it down, and I can show that to you in a minute. I had talked about where I wasn't sure about what I was going to do when I got to the top of the quilt. And what I meant was I didn't know what I was going to be doing when I got to the corners. And initially what I did is I just kind of folded them over and they were square and I didn't really like it. So I ripped that out today and I've decided I'm just going to miter all the corners. When you miter corners from the back of the quilt, it's a little different. Plus, because I have so much batting, I'm really kind of just winging it. So I've gotten them mitered into some form of fashion. So then I'll just stitch them down. But what I wanted to show you, my camera did some weird things, so I had to I'm having to reshoot this. So I had it all pinned down, but I'm gonna take out a section here just to show you what I was doing. Okay, so I'm gonna show you here what I did, since my camera did weird things. So I have about 4.5 inches. Here's the batting and here's the backing. Now, typically when you roll fabric from the back of the quilt to the front, you would trim the batting off back to here, and then you would trim this down to just 1 inch. But that's not what I'm doing because I want my binding to be fluffy and I want it to be wider. So I'm leaving everything intact. So then I'm just rolling it over. And I'm eyeballing it right now. I'm guessing that it's like 2 inches. I'll check it once I have it all pinned. And then I'll just go along and adjust it. But that's basically what I'm doing. So then I just pin it, and then I just move down. And I'm just tucking that edge under. And then I am pinning it. I'll do one more here. And I really just pin it to kind of get it in place. I end up really adjusting it and making sure everything's right when I'm sewing it. Because I do take my time when I'm sewing it. Okay. So I kind of have it pinned down. It's so fluffy, it's really hard to get it to stay in place. So I pin it the best I can. I don't think the corners are going to be like super sharp because of, the amount of batting that I'm dealing with, which is okay. I'll be happy if it looks that nice when it's done. But yeah. Oh, so let me just spin you around here. So here, there's the big stitching. I'm using the burgundy thread. You can see it right. The camera's going to let me right there. And that goes fairly easy. So I'm going to go and stitch down the parts that I have pinned. I just have this top section and then a few sections on the side where I just need to do a little bit of touch up. And then I'll go over and do my big stitch quilting over the rest of the quilt around the edge where the binding or / border is attached, like I showed you a minute ago. And then it'll be done, and then I'll share it with you. So I have the quilt, it's all finished. I will say it did have its trials and tribulations, and the seam ripper did get a lot of use, unfortunately. But that all comes with the territory when you are experimenting and you are trying something new. Now, if you want to see more about this quilt, I'll put a link to this video that I did on the big stitch method and the making of this quilt at the end of this one. But right now I'm going to share with you what this quilt looks like now that it's all done. All right. So here it is. I'm really happy with it. I love how the corners came out. And I love how this is puffy. But I am so happy with how it came out. And it's been getting a lot of views. I'm just so thrilled with it. All right, so for now, I wish you all well, and most of all, be quilty.